Good to go. Hello everyone, welcome to another video. My name is Mario So, and in today's video, I want to see if I can match the S-Cinetone picture profile on the Sony A7IV with that of the Sony A7 III. You might be asking yourself, wait, but the A7 III does not have S-Cinetone, so how are we going to do that? Well, so let's find out. So it's great to see you back here again. If you're new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button for future content similar to this video. If you're already subscribed and you came back, thank you so much for coming back. So about a year or so ago, I made a video on S-Cinetone on the Sony A7 III. Now, the Sony A7 III does not have built-in S-Cinetone. It does not exist on the A7 III. But when I was doing some research last year, I found this YouTube channel, Extra Shot, which I'll link to in the description below. So they created this fake sort of picture profile that very closely simulates or emulates S-Cinetone on the Sony A7 III. And I was actually very happy with the results. The footage that came out of the A7 III with that picture profile was very close to S-Cinetone in my opinion, and it looked very cinematic and very filmic straight out of camera. If you haven't seen that video, if you want to know how to set a fake or this fake S-Cinetone picture profile on your Sony A7 III, you can check out this video up here. But you can do that after you finish watching this video. So S-Cinetone is a built-in color picture profile from Sony that was traditionally only in higher-end cinema cameras. And what this picture profile gave you was a filmic or cinematic look straight out of camera with minimal color grading in the edit. And this is great if you want really cinematic looking footage straight out of your camera and you don't want to bother with shooting with log or exposing in S-Log2 or S-Log3, which can sometimes be a little bit challenging. And if you're new to color correction or color grading as well and you don't want to bother with that but still have cinematic looking footage, then S-Cinetone is usually the way to go. I do want to say that it's best always to try things for yourself and experiment and see what works best for you. What works best for me or for someone else might not work best for you and your workflow. And let me know in the comments below if you have shot with S-Cinetone before and if you like it. And this video right now I'm shooting on the A7 IV is completely shot on S-Cinetone with some minor color correction adjustments later in post. So in this video, I will be comparing that picture profile on the A7 III, whether it matches S-Cinetone on the A7 IV. So before we go over and compare the footage of these two cameras, I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of shooting S-Cinetone versus in S-Log2 or S-Log3. So in terms of some of the pros, you get cinematic footage, filmic looking footage straight out of your camera. The other thing is that S-Cinetone is very easy to expose with. All you need to do is just make sure that your metering is close to 0 and you're good to go. And if you ever shot in log footage, you probably know that exposure takes a little bit of practice for you to master it. And S-Cinetone just simplifies all of that. The other reason why you might want to shoot in S-Cinetone is that your base ISO lowers all the way down to, for example, on the A7 IV to 125. And on other cameras, it lowers it down as well. And the reason why that's important is because the higher the ISO, the more noise and other artifacts you're going to introduce into your footage. And if you're shooting outside in a bright sunny day, if you have to start your base ISO at 800 or 850, for example, then you're going to have to bring an ND filter to cut the amount of light coming into your camera, or else you have an overexposed image. But with S-Cinetone, you can lower your ISO all the way down, and that's going to help a lot exposing in very bright scenarios. Another reason why you want to shoot in S-Cinetone is if you don't want to bother with color grading or color correcting your footage. If you are shooting for a project, maybe for YouTube or for social media, and you want something to be delivered quick, then S-Cinetone might be the one to go for. You can still go ahead and do some minor corrections in that footage though, so you can still polish it a little bit more before you send it out. But if you didn't want to do that, it looks pretty good straight out of camera. Now, in terms of some of the cons of why you might not want to shoot in S-Cinetone are that you do not have as much flexibility in color grading in post. When you shoot in a log picture profile, you retain more information and more data in your image, which allows you to further correct that later in post. With S-Cinetone, you are more restricted because it's a baked-in picture profile that loses some information as is captured. There are a lot more pros than cons, but it all depends on your shooting style and what your final output's going to be and what your workflow is. So on the A7 IV, you'll find S-Cinetone on PP11, and on the Sony A7 III, you can map it to whichever picture profile channel you want to use. On my A7 III, I have it mapped to number 1, and the way that you set up this S-Cinetone picture profile on the Sony A7 III is with these settings. Let's go and get footage with these two cameras comparing it side by side. So I'll be shooting in 4K at 24 frames per second for both of these cameras. And one thing to make sure that you do is to make sure that your white balance is dialed in as close as possible to what it's supposed to be. This is going to make it match a lot easier, and it's going to save you a lot of time in the edit. So for this, what I did was use a gray card. If you don't know how to use a gray card for white balance, I'll be creating a YouTube Shorts video about it in a bit. I already shot it. I just haven't got a chance to edit that, but I'd stay on the lookout for that. All right, so this is the footage from these two cameras, and as you can see, it's pretty close. The S-Cinetone on both matches really closely. If you have an A7IV, you can use an A7IV as your main camera and an A7III as your B camera and shoot both an S-Cinetone, well, a fake S-Cinetone picture profile on the A7III, but it's pretty safe to match it together. If I were to shoot the same scene but from different angles, I could probably cut to from the A7IV to an A7III and have it match quite well. Let me know in the comments below if you think the fake S-Cinetone picture profile on the A7 III matches that on the A7 IV. So that's it for today's video. I hope you found it insightful, helpful, useful. And if you did, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. I appreciate you so much, and until next time.